What's up everybody and welcome to Inside the Game, your source for everything in the world of video games. Now you can always be a part of our show by going to insidethegame.ca or hitting us up in Discord, where there you can submit your clip and be the highlight of the week. We've got an awesome episode this week. What do we have? Here it is. It's the rundown.
Let me tell you, this is an isometric Souls-like / Diablo hack and slash game.
With a bunch of releases lately, and nothing seems to go smooth, and that's what we're talking about. Scott, it's a new season. I know the year's just begun. However, our backlog has already started.
So, in a recent interview, he stated that he would like to star as Jack in a Jak and Daxter movie.
This is a HBO miniseries right here. If you're following like The Last of Us, because this is absolutely phenomenal.
Your character, Victor, he seems to have this power to kind of see beyond the regular dimension. And that...
I told you this is going to be awesome, so let's get started before we head into Horizon Forbidden West with Cory, Achilles, Legends Untold.
This week, I'm getting an early look at Achilles Legends Untold. This week, I got to take an early look at Achilles Legends Untold from Darkpoint Games over on Steam. Let me tell you, this is an isometric Souls-like / Diablo hack and slash game that honestly I have been really enjoying. We're only getting a first little bit of the game here, probably maybe the first 20% of the game. Outside of that, they're still kind of developing the rest of it, but what we've been given as an offering so far, especially for early access, I thought they'd done a really good job. The graphics were solid. I didn't have any kind of graphical glitches as I played. I thought, it weren't maybe the best graphics in the world, but they definitely suited the world we were in, and it really kind of immersed you into this story about Achilles. And that's kind of where we start here. We jump off the boat onto the beaches of Troy, and this is kind of how the tutorial kind of works its way in. I was playing on controller, and I thought the layout of the controls was really well done. That being said, the controls of this game were definitely laid out well, but they were a little bit hard to master because this game, being that Souls style game, is punishing. You find yourself dying a lot and repeating portions of the levels over and over again. Luckily, along the way, you find these shrines of Hades that act as kind of checkpoints that allow you to rest up, regain health and some of your items, as long as using the currency you gain as well along the way to upgrade in the skill tree, where you can upgrade your strength, stamina, and also kind of gain new abilities that allow you to kind of change what you're doing as far as attacking. I was able to actually unlock an ability to let me throw my shield and then recall it. So that was kind of good for hitting enemies at range and then kind of moving in and attacking from there. So there are some definitely cool abilities that you're going to get to unlock along the way with this one. But again, like I said, it is punishing. So when you die, whatever you're carrying other than your health potions and a couple other potions, you lose. So you need to be able to make sure that if you're collecting things that you really want to keep, you're going back to those shrines, or you're finding the next one along the way. It is difficult at times, and this is kind of where the frustration boils over for me at points, but honestly, this is a mechanic that worked really well in this game. Now, with every little bit of frustration that this game did bring out in me when I died multiple times, there was a level of satisfaction when you did defeat those kind of mini bosses and the big bosses, because these are encounters that you run into quite often actually between these worlds. I only got to preview the first kind of chapter of the story here. There is going to be 5 total, and there's going to be multiple game modes. You can actually play the dungeons with multiple players. In this early access, you can actually play the dungeons with 2 players. They have announced for the full version of the game, you'll actually be able to go in with 4 players total, which I think would be a ton of fun, especially if you could do it locally. Online obviously would be great fun as well, but being able to play games like this locally when everybody's on the same screen, just kind of hacking and slashing, it's always a ton of fun. But honestly, the boss battles here were the highlight for me. I found them very difficult. I definitely had to play them multiple times, but the satisfaction of actually beating that boss and moving the story forward was more than enough for all those times that I died. It kind of wiped that frustration right out of there. So there was a level of difficulty there that I did enjoy. I really like the challenge they throw, and the fact that the AI does kind of learn your movements and the way you kind of play through makes it a little bit more difficult. Like I said, the longer these battles go, the harder they become. So definitely the boss battles probably have to be my highlight of this preview so far. Overall, I've actually had a really good time with Achilles Legends Untold. Like I said, we're only getting about maybe the first 20% of the game here, so we're not getting all the full features or the full levels as well. But it was a good time. It wasn't easy. It definitely was frustrating, but I think that's part of these games, and that's where the satisfaction these games come into play. We haven't got an announcement on price yet of what we're going to be spending for this, so that will be dependent on whether or not we'd score this one higher. But right now, because this is an early access, I can tell you guys this is definitely one I recommend to keep your eye on, because I think, honestly, once this one gets launched, this game's going to have some serious potential.
Become a warrior who will defy gods.
Scott, it's a new season. I know the year's just begun. However, our backlog has already started. What do you have on your backlog of games that you're hoping to get to before another year comes and goes?
Well, I was really looking forward to one of my most anticipated titles, Dying Light 2, but
Sure.
it's somewhat of a happy accident that I missed that one because, well, its launch was very
Rocky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's to put it in the least amount of words. A bad launch. But I
Yeah.
really want to get in there still. I have my hopes
Sure.
set high. They will eventually come around and fix that up. I want to play with Nate and his brothers. I want to get in on this. Dead Island is something that's one of my favorite games ever, and I see this to be kind of an extension of Dead Island. So
For
I'm
sure.
hoping to circle back around in on that one. But the one that passed me by was the Uncharted collection.
Dude.
I'm an outsider on Uncharted, having not owned a PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I would really like to rectify that, but everybody knows there just is not enough PlayStations to go around right now. So
Right not.
that one's going to be waiting for a little while. It is on PC, however.
Yep.
But I have not yet grabbed it. And the real standout to me that I really want to get into is Sifu.
Wow.
Sifu looks
Nice.
to be just frustrating enough. And it occupies a unique space. That combat, that kind of style to it. It's
Yeah.
something that I haven't really played before. So that's one that I definitely have to circle around to.
I struggled with Sifu a lot, honestly. I was able to get into the second level. They expect you to complete that game with one life. And that's kind of how it goes, right? As every time you fall, your age goes up. And it's kind of one of those things. Your age only goes so far until you completely start all over again. So that was my biggest struggle with Sifu. I think the game is fantastic, though. Like that combat, dude, you've never experienced combat like this. And it's so seamless. That kung fu fighting is just, what an incredible punishment. And it's one of those things, I'm not one for punishment, Scott, but it's one of those games, dude, I went back to it just the other day. So that tells you something. But if I've got a game I'm looking forward to that I missed completely, and it's been out for a long time, it is out years ago actually, but they just remastered it. It is Life is Strange Remastered Collection. I never finished 1 and 2, and now here's my chance. Nate and I reviewed True Colors over on the show, so we were able to get into that. Dude, that was wow, like what a great storytelling experience that is. It heartfelt, right? And that's kind of where Life is Strange took off as well, way back in the day. And it was an incredible thing, but they dropped it episodically. So I was only in for a little bit and then moved on to something else. It's kind of hard to sometimes keep with those episodics when those games keep dropping and there's always something new to move on to. So now that it's a one complete collection, dude, here's my chance. Here's my time. I might just jump back in. I think I have to. So there's a ton of games already. I know it's only February, but if you missed one and you want to go back to it, let us know. InsideTheGame.ca.
In In the most recent Nintendo Direct, we got some details on a DLC pack coming out for Mario Kart 8. I'm pretty excited about this because they announced we're going to be getting 48 courses added to this DLC for $24.99, which I actually think is a pretty good deal here. And if you actually are a Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack subscriber and you have a premium package, you're actually going to be getting this one for free, which is pretty cool. And honestly, we're going to be getting 8 tracks over 6 separate drops starting on March 18th of this year, ending sometime in 2023, which honestly, that timeline's a little worrisome for me because they have kind of had some rumblings that maybe we're hearing that there's development of the new Mario Kart 9, but we don't have any real details. So the fact that this is gonna take almost 2 years to drop all this DLC for 25 bucks, I mean, it's nice that we're gonna be getting a bunch of new tracks, but this timeline is a little worrisome for me, especially as a fan of the series. I want to see the new game. We've had Mario Kart 8 for a long time now. I think it's time for something new, but in the meantime, if you're a diehard fan, we have these new tracks. So honestly, for $24.99, this DLC might be something you want to check out.
Alright, so as most of you know, Tom Holland will be starring in a new Uncharted movie as Nathan Drake. This excites me. I love his version of Spider-Man, and I think he's a really solid younger actor. So, in a recent interview, he stated that he would like to star as Jack in a Jak and Daxter movie. And what I find quite interesting is that it's not so much looking like a Jak and Daxter 1 version of a movie that he would like to see, more of a Jak 2 or 3 where things get a lot darker and more twisted. In his interview, he said, "I would like to make a Jak and Daxter movie, and I would like to play Jak. But I would make it at A24, so it was like really weird and like dark. I would do like a really weird live action version of Jak and Daxter." So those were his exact words. A lot of likes in there, which kind of surprises me, but this excites me. I love Jak and Daxter as a young boy, so to maybe see it come back as a movie, because who knows if we'll actually get a game of the Jak and Daxter series brought back to life. Like, that would really make me happy. But if all we get is a movie, yeah, you know what? I would like to see Tom Holland play as Jak. So let me know what you guys think. Does this idea excite you, or do you just want a new Jak and Daxter game at this point?
Sony keeps on rolling software beta testing for the PlayStation 5. As of last week, I mentioned they were checking out software that will let you get any PS5 captures to go straight to your cell phone, whether it's Android or iOS. And this is an easier way instead of using a USB stick or sending your capture to a friend and then asking them to send it back or going to the party chat to download your capture. Well, this week in the new beta testing, they're rolling out customization for your PS5 to get users' feedback. And in this new feature, they include new party chat options, game-based enhancements, accessibility options, and UI features. As announced on the PlayStation blog, Sony detailed the new features coming to the console first. Sony says there are new changes to the party systems on the PS5. Players will now be able to start an open party, which all your friends can see and join, or a closed party exclusively for players you invite. PlayStation 4 players will also be able to control individual voice chat volume for every person in the party, which is already a feature on the PS5. There's also going to be changes to the game base, where you can set up parties, invite friends and see messages. As for the UI feature, you'll be able to sort your game collection by genre. Previously, sorting options were limited to alphabetical order and recently played games. Another big feature they're implementing is the voice commands, but this will only be available in countries of the US and UK at the moment for testing, but will be rolling to other countries real soon. Now, with the voice commands, you can access your games, your apps and the settings simply by using the built-in microphone in your DualSense controller and saying the voice command, "Hey PlayStation."
Guys, guys, we have an interesting topic this week. We've been with a bunch of releases lately, and nothing seems to go smooth. And that's what we're talking about, the state of games at launch, because nothing these days is ever finished at launch or into the life cycle of that generation of the game itself. And we're just kind of confused. By no means are we developers. Let's clarify that we are not a game dev, right? We don't know what the issues are. But from a consumer's perspective, when you the other day, Nate, spent $130 on Dying Light 2 and it doesn't work, this is where the questions arise and go, what's going on? Why are we in this kind of state in the first place? Nate, why don't you explain what happened?
Well, so me and my brother, Dying Light 2 just came out. Really excited to play co-op. Dying Light 1 had a pretty seamless co-op experience, especially at this point. Like, they have that refined. So heading into this game, you have to do a few hour tutorial to actually open up co-op. So finally we do it, and man, for 2 hours we had like multiple times where we just couldn't connect, and then once we did connect, you're talking maybe max 5 minutes where we're actually in the same match together. And like just stuff like this, man, this is opening weekend. Time is very valuable nowadays, and the rate that games come out, the ability to move on to the next is like, you can do that all the time now. And when you get a game like Dying Light that just doesn't work right away, it's like, how long is this going to take? Well, according to their forums, they are addressing it within the next 2 days as of this recording. So that's fairly quick. But when you got games like Diablo 2 or Outriders, where it takes a month, 2 months for them to fix these issues, like, as a consumer, it is such a kick in the pants. And by no means am I a developer, but it's just like, it's not fair. You don't spend this kind of money just for something to not work. Because it wasn't even maybe 15 years ago where you bought a game and it worked. Because there wasn't live updates that they could just rely on. Well, so anyways, I will... Sorry, go ahead, Drew.
Here's the thing, right? A game hits gold. Now the game's ready for launch. Basically, essentially, the developers have said, okay, we're ready to ship the game. The game's not done. It'll never be done, right? Not once does an artist ever say, that painting is perfect, I'm finished. There's always something you can go back and do. And as a developer, same thing, right? There's always that in the back of your mind going, well, I could do this or I could do that. And that's why a lot of times we'll see sequels, because there's an iteration on the first one. But when you launch a game and it's supposed to be done, the bare bones, right? If you have that checklist, Scott and I were talking about the other day, you form your checklist and then you go check. Oh, Battlefield, no score word, right? Like, no. How do you skip that on the checklist? So where in all this time invested after delay, so especially when you get back to Dying Light, Nate, for example, delay after delay after delay. You think
7 years,
right? So after 7 years of development and delays after delays, wouldn't everything be ironed out? From a consumer's perspective, you would think that is, and that's why this question comes up. Scott, I want to kick it to you, because Battlefield, you're one of our biggest Battlefield fans around. And dude, that was another one that has a rocky start, to the point where a lot of people are just bouncing out of the game, and it's only months old.
Yeah, that one hurts on a personal level. I thought Battlefield 5 was my least favorite one, and unfortunately that got upended now. 20. I don't even want to say the title of it, because it's just not complete. I feel like I should just start with Battle and just stop it there. But yeah, we talked about this checklist, because how do you get to putting the game out? It's gold, you've certified it, but it's missing such core components. And you could say the scoreboard is just one piece of it. There's a thing in real life with sporting kind of taking away the score, and that's not to diminish, it doesn't diminish the fun, but I believe it does. And further to that, voice chat. How is there still not voice chat? And just like Nate said, after 7 years of development, I look at Battlefield DICE and I think, what else have they made in 20 years? How do you stumble on something so core to your development? And what do I know? But even when you get a so-called good release, like Halo, I believe Halo Infinite was a solid release. There's some issue with the online and people's preferences, but that's one thing. But even they had to kind of sacrifice Forge mode, and co-op.
Co-op.
So even when it's considered a good release, you're missing whole sections of the game. That's it's not very positive in my opinion. But and if it can hurt the biggest of the launchers, the biggest games, the biggest developers, is anything safe? What is the next release? Do you think Elden Ring is going to be solid? Because I'm really hoping so, man.
Yeah. It's scary stuff, right? Like we've all been in that generation where we bought physical copies of games, and that was literally the last time complete games were released.
Yeah.
I mean, ever since digital games became a thing, there's always been version of games that haven't been complete at launch. And it's starting to become so commonplace now that some people don't even recognize it as a problem. It's just something that they expect at this point, which is ridiculous, right? As gamers, as people that spend their hard-earned money on these huge titles, some of the most hyped up titles of the year, some of these games come out and you can't play them on opening weekend because of server issues, or there's, game breaking glitches. I mean, there's so many games that have these major issues, and like you guys said, it's like this huge omission on the checklist. Like, how could you have missed some of these major factors? And as consumers, I feel like we're just getting into it even worse and worse as the years go on, because they make these games bigger and bigger. I mean, think about if they put some of today's games on discs. Like, we would have had 5-6 discs probably for some games. So I mean, I can be happy that we have the ability to get these massive games digitally, or even hard copies if we really wanted to, but digitally really now is the way to go. And it's so disheartening to know, because if you don't have Xbox Game Pass, I'm sorry to say, because certain games come out for free, and if it's a flop, you don't feel nearly as bad for downloading it, but if you would have bought Battlefield at its full price, I think that would have been a huge disappointment to spend that money and find out what that product was when you got it, right? So I think it's rampant right now in this industry, and I don't see it going anywhere because developers have made it so commonplace, and it's really disappointing.
Well, day and date, the game launches, there's an automatic day one patch, right? And that's supposed to be set aside. When we get back to that game, it goes gold. The game's ready, but they're not done. They're going to work on tweaking the little minute mechanics that they need to finish and polish up, right? They have that expectancy of, okay, if we go gold 3 months early, that means we have more time to squash bugs and polish the game. Man, if you go back to the cartridge days, that isn't an option, right? The game is done, and that's when it ships, when it's done. Nowadays, it's day one patch. We all saw what happened in Cyberpunk, to the point where PlayStation actually even took it off the store. A first of its ever happening like that. But then let's take a look at No Man's Sky. Yeah, it didn't launch well either, but look at the state of the game now. So there is definitely redemption possibilities. It's just maybe we shouldn't have to deal with that redemption. Let us know your thoughts. InsideTheGame.ca.
I'll be okay.
You'll pay for that.
3 against 1? I like those odds.
Count again.
Sometimes you have to become a monster to stay human.
Nothing could ever tear us apart anyway.
Alright, I'm back with more tips and memories of Mars, and this week I'm going to teach you guys how to farm silicon, because there are 2 essential locations on the map in which you need to know to farm this sort of difficult resource to find elsewhere. So in the southwest part of the map, just west of platform Teok, at coordinates x169, y594, you will find a solar panel field, and here you can farm anywhere from 3 to sometimes 7 or 8 solar panels, and this gives you plenty of silicon. Now if we go to the south central part of the map, west of Desert Retreat, at coordinates x636, y676, there is yet again another solar panel field for you to farm away. But that's it, guys. There are 2 solid locations for silicon on this map, so depending on where you live on the map, you might just want to go to one of these places instead of both, because it's quite a trek across this map.
Well, Steve, we're off to the Forbidden West. All right, Steve, you and I think, are pretty pumped to be talking about this. Finally, it is here. It is coming very, very soon. We've been on it for, well, at this point, after I rolled credits, over 50 hours. Horizon Forbidden West. Ladies and gentlemen, it was probably one of my most anticipated games of this year, and it stands the testament, Steve. It is fantastic. I've really enjoyed my time with it. I'm going back. This is a game everybody needs to platinum. That's my goal now, Steve. That's how good this is for me to go back and want to be able to platinum the game. What are your early thoughts?
Wow. To be honest with you, if you love story-driven games, like we mentioned before, this is very based on that. But this game has everything you could ever want in a game, whether it's adventure, betrayal. There's so much going on, and this, to be honest with you, this is a HBO miniseries right here. If you're following like The Last of Us, because this is absolutely phenomenal. And the best way the experience I got from this, from Horizon Forbidden West, was when I played Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. I was grinding out a lot of Zero Dawn, and I love the way they immerse you in the character, and like Aloy and Ellie of the first one, finding out the identity of who they are and working that relationship with them. But with both the second one, you know who you are and you're on a mission, and she is so focused on this, and I absolutely love Forbidden West. Amazing.
Aloy's really matured into this next one, and it's only like 6 months after the end of the first one. So if you haven't played the first one, you have to go play the first one. There's so much that ties into that relationship of the first game with the old world and everything coming up into the new, and where the state of the world is at within Earth and Aloy's adventure ahead of her. So there's a lot of back and forth between some of the characters with what we've seen from the past game. And it's funny because my youngest started playing the Zero Dawn, and I was watching going, man, I remember that part and I remember that part. It's been 5 years, Steve, since we played that game. So for me to see some of that and then relate it over into what I just finished, it's just, wow. Every character has a purpose, right? They're not just tossed in as a side character and go, here you go, and we'll see what happens to them kind of thing, right? They're there with a purpose to kind of expand on Aloy's story. And they're all heartfelt. There's always some kind of motivation behind them. And then the world itself is incredible. I love the point of, I go for a mission, and this is what happens with a lot of these open world games, because this is not a small game at all. 50 hours, Steve, I only feel like I'm just beginning. Right at this point, I finished the campaign, but there's still so many other things to do, treasures to go find, other side quests, and that's one of the coolest parts, is going out and exploring this beautiful world. And you come across these nodes and you find out backstory of people at a hotel and why they were there and what's going on, which then leads into a puzzle, then leads into this, and then next thing you know, a side quest turns into like an hour long, because I found myself just kind of veering all over the place. And the environment is so it is old world, right? Like there's a bus buried within the sand, all rusted up. Then you get into this jungle area, it's a hotel just in shambles, and there's a sign up top and it's been like twisted and all weathered down. And dude, this is my game of the year. Absolutely fantastic. There's nothing wrong with this game that I had a problem with. There's a couple little graphical issues here or there, but it didn't hinder my experience whatsoever. And when you get into other aspects, Steve, I gotta shut up for a second and let you talk before I keep going.
Well, I'm gonna touch. We were talking about the graphics. I mean, the visuals of this, the detail of every like fine hair moving in the wind, or you're on your charger on your machine and it goes sort of like that slow motion as you're getting more momentum. There's so much more in this. I mean, they've taken from the first one, and where you don't think they can make it any better, they just maxed everything 100% maxed out. Whether it's the crafting, the graphics, the audio,
the tribes,
the whole thing is a whole package. Yeah.
Dude, you get into some of the tribal areas and stuff like that. Each one is so unique and so craftily different than the last, right? Each one has their own kind of their own feel and their own purpose of what they have within the Forbidden West and why they're there and what's going on with them. And there's so much to talk about just with the tribes alone. It was awesome. And then your gear comes into effect too. You can have your gear look like some of them. You can color your gear to different color schemes and things like that. There's so much more within this game. This reminds me honestly of going from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2. It's been stepped up that much more, right? When you jumped off for the first time with Assassin's Creed 2 into 2 hidden blades, that was an incredible feeling. And this is how Aloy's adventure has now stepped up. This is Guerilla Games probably. This is easily Guerrilla's game's best game ever. This is fantastic. I can't give it enough praise. The only thing I would have liked to have seen, because you are looking to craft so much, is when you are out in the world, I would like to be able to open up to find out what I need to craft for my gear. Instead of having to go back to a workbench, you have to go to a workbench to craft your stuff, which is fine. But then that's how you also realize what pieces of machines you need in order to get that next level of your gear. And that's one of the problems I had, was I wouldn't know until I got there. But by the time I head out to the world, I kind of forgot what I was after, because I get pulled away on something else, on some other side quest, the mission, the story, this, that, the other, just finding other things in the world, right? That was my biggest thing. But you can create the job at the workbench, Steve, but I don't want to have to be able to do that. I want to just be able to go and dude, if you open up the menu, it's just like checklist of all these other things to do, and I just want to spend more time in the world. Every time I put the game down, I'm like, ooh, if I go do this now, and I don't stop thinking about the game, right? And it's one of those things. It's a memorable experience. This is what Aloy's next adventure should be. It feels the way it should feel. Everything is just fantastic, dude. I love this game.
And just touching on what you said about the crafting, one thing I did love about this, there's no shortage of materials for your crafting.
Yeah.
Whether it's branches for your arrows, there's always machines around. There's other things you find, other machines that have been destroyed that laying on the floor that you can go and loot and get the parts for your crafting, which was good, because I've played games before that you've spent ages trying to find materials just to do any crafting. But you just look down at the ground and, whether it's even hunting animals, for the skins and the bones. Again, you need it for upgrading your pouches and things like that. They thought of everything in this game.
They certainly have, Steve. Steve, one of the things we didn't talk about is one of the biggest things about the game is its machines. They are so crafted, so well diverse. With this list of machines, there's so many. They've added a ton more and different variations. And then that's one of the coolest parts too. Depending on the variation, they have different parts you use for crafting. Like, they thought of so much with this game. Dude, I could keep gushing for the next hour. Until then, let's just wrap this up, Steve. I think for me, my game of the year, Horizon Forbidden West, Guerrilla's best game ever. This is fantastic, and I have to do it, man. I'm there with the 10. What about you?
Well, I'm exactly with you. I absolutely love this game. I had trouble putting it down, even when I was so tired. Like you said, Guerrilla's best game. It kept me immersed. And to be honest with you, this game is up for a lot of awards. And my game of the year, definitely. I'm giving this my very first ever 10 out of 10.
Nice.
Top marks and well deserved to Guerrilla Games for a true masterpiece. The story of Aloy's journey is one you'll never forget. Visually amazing, compelling gameplay and interaction, with a phenomenal story with voice acting to suit. Game of the year.
Let's talk about Lust from Beyond. This is not a romance novel. It is worth noting that there is a lot of adult content in this game that I will not show. In addition to that, it is a heavily story-based game, and I'm not going to give away any of those spoilers either. I really appreciate those elements of the game, and I want you to experience that for yourself. But let's get into some of the topics. I'm going to set the scene here. You are this character, and you're trying to search for some psychological help. You show up in this small town to find your doctor, and, well, it doesn't quite go as planned. Your character, Victor, he seems to have this power to kind of see beyond the regular dimension, and that makes you quite special. There's two different cults in town, and they're both just trying to, well, explore this other dimension. So you become quite useful to them, and that is the majority of the storyline. You're kind of playing around these two cults, maybe in one or two of them. You explore this other dimension, and that's definitely the selling point. To me, when I looked at this game, I thought, wow, that world looks disgusting. A lot of the times you'll be playing in that area just trying to make it from point A to B, really. Sometimes you join into that area to try and find a certain relic, a book in one example, and then just get back to the main world to reconvene with the cult and move on to the next thing. But there's a big difference between what you do in that world and what you do in our Earth, and that makes it kind of mixed up. You don't get too tired or bored of the same area. Even though a lot of the times when you're in this other dimension, there's a lot of these kind of difficult puzzles. Some of them aren't very difficult, but some of them just take a little while to get used to, and then you realize, oh, there is the solution, and it leaves that kind of eureka moment that coasts you to the next puzzle, where, in my case, I got stuck again. Your life is in danger throughout most of the game, and that actually leads to one of my favorite aspects of this. You have a quite dynamic character. You start off kind of feeble, you're kind of concerned about your own mental well-being, and you end up, throughout a lot of different changes, you become a much stronger character. There's periods of the game where you feel absolutely helpless, just run, and then there's periods of the games, usually later on in the game, that you finally feel powerful. You can enact your revenge on these other characters. And these other characters are worth note as well. It's a huge backstory behind what the main questline is, and then each of these characters have their own depth, their own lore. They interact with other characters both in the present and in the past. So you, a lot of the time, have these options when you're talking to people. You can maybe sway somebody to be on your side versus this other character. You can raise doubts to the cult members about their leadership. You can do a lot of these kind of things that interact with all the other characters in the game, and that adds a huge amount of side quest, if you want to call it that. There's a lot of mystery that you're solving. There's not a whole lot of action, although you do get a knife and eventually a firearm. You are eventually able to fight back, but it leads to a big change. Like I said, you start off quite defenseless, but you end off much more powerful. Other than combat and puzzles, you're doing a lot of stealth. Like I said, you're very scared. It makes a lot of sense to crouch and avoid a lot of these fights. But that does lead me into another great point about this game. You have a lot of choice, a lot of agency. Not always in the quest or certain conversations. You do kind of have a way of slanting the conversation. But you have a lot of choice in, well, it's possible to just straight up murder some of these main quest characters. And that, as far as I can tell, does change the outcome of the game, and it certainly changes how some characters view you. Graphically, I'm quite satisfied with this game. You can tell there's a lot of HD textures, and everything looks really great between the lighting and the, well, darkness. And that kind of leads me to a slight negative. When you go into this other world, it's very dark, and a lot of the times you don't have a lantern to light your way. Sometimes you do, and that's kind of an easier section in my opinion, but sometimes you don't. That darkness does lead to an overall feeling, an atmosphere in this other world, and it is thick. There's a lot of horror aspects to it. Like I said earlier, the map is kind of organic and gross. The sound design is very well done, but again, disgusting. But what that does is lead to a feeling of you are in an alien place, and it is certainly worth being afraid of in certain sections. Now, there is a lot of gore in this game. That's the majority of the adult content, but they don't go super hard into what you would expect from a quote-unquote horror game. It's not quite that advanced. There's a few jump scares they sprinkle in there, but it's not a constant sort of barrage of horror aspects like you would maybe expect. And to me, that was a little bit of a letdown, but between all the other different pacings in this game, it all comes together. It's really more of a horror thriller between the storyline and the different characters you interact with. It has a lot going for it, and that's something I really appreciate. The good storytelling can totally sell a game, but in my opinion, the action backs it up. Like I said, there's kind of this frantic feeling at the beginning, but that comes around full circle into this nice cathartic ending. There's a whole lot of betrayal in this game, and it does give you that feeling of getting even. And that was something that was very important to me about 2 hours into this one. Now, the visual aspects of this game and the audio, everything is disgusting, and I love this alternate world to explore. That was excellent. I wish they leaned a little bit into the horror a little bit more, maybe some more gore, some more combat that would drag that out. But in my opinion, it hit the mark just fine. I really like this game. It is a sweet spot for me. I have to give this one an 8.5. Again, it nailed it. Lust from Beyond is a deep and engaging story with incredible horror settings. This is a horror thriller walking sim done right.
Well, that'll wrap up today's episode. Thank you for hanging out with us. And there it is, Horizon Forbidden West. Let us know, are you hyped for that game? You can tell us over at InsideTheGame.ca or hit us up in Discord. And while you're there, submit your clip to be the highlight of the week. Who we have this week? None other than FloralDuchess and some hell let loose. Sneaky, sneaky. Until next week, thanks for watching, and we'll see you inside the game.